Paul Meeks, always brought to you by my good friends with Benzinga right here on their YouTube channel. Please like us, please subscribe, please do whatever you can do to help the cause. And so we have a good show today, July 29, 2025, but I'm going to keep the second section, which I talk about the individual buys and holds, because we can send those to you offline, because I want to spend more time today with a really exciting guest who I'll introduce in just a few minutes. But let's get to the news of the day, the news you have to know, the news that is much broader than just the impact on the individual companies. I was on Spotify's quarterly webcast this morning at 8 o'clock Eastern. Disappointed. I have a lot of people that say, Paul, I like the safety of the subscriber model, so let's buy some Spotify. Well, the company does not have the same financial model as Netflix. So you've heard me say it many times in video and other media streaming, just buy Netflix. Netflix and Spotify are both subscriber models, but they are not the same financially, and I think they never will be. Next, Cadence Design Systems had a really good quarter. Cadence and its partner in EDA software are both up very nicely today. However, Cadence got bagged and has to pay a $141 million fine to the authorities for skirting the export controls and sending its software to China. But anyway, EDA software with the AI infrastructure build continuing, very well positioned. I prefer Cadence to Synopsys, because Synopsys just did a huge acquisition, and I'm a little bit worried there about its acquisition assimilation. Mag 7, 4 to 7 are going to be reporting their results tomorrow and the day after. I don't expect any surprises. The big surprise from the Mag 7 for me was how well Google did last week. I was really surprised to see continued growth in search revenue. I still think over time they are going to face some challenges from Perplexity AI and some of these other AI native upstarts, but so far so good. I thought Tesla was going to suck, and it did suck. Next, Alibaba, I think, is interesting. This has always been my favorite large cap play in China, and they have just introduced some glasses that are powered by AI, and we'll see. Maybe this is the catalyst that everybody has been waiting for. Because so far, the uptake, whether it's the glasses presented to us from Apple or Meta a couple of years back now, haven't been that great. The next interesting piece is a company called Z.AI, which is a Chinese company, which claims, just like DeepSeek, also out of China, did last January, that they have a cheaper and more efficient large language model. And remember the threat to the AI infrastructure building trade, that when DeepSeek announced their own capabilities with their model last January, it did lead to a correction in tech stocks. So we'll have to stay there. Tesla reports its quarter, as I said. I'm shocked at where the stock price is, because their EV business is in a steep decline. And I think the next couple of quarters, even according to Elon Musk's comments, are going to be worse. So you are making a huge bet that they are going to be the leader in autonomous driving. And after that, robots. Well, they're not going to have the same position they did when they, give them credit, started the EV business, because Waymo in autonomous vehicles is backed by Google with its deep pockets, and they have a big, big lead. But Tesla did announce an over $16 billion deal with the South Korean semiconductor foundry Samsung. They are going to build the next gen Tesla chip, which is supposed to power autonomous driving. It's called the AI6 chip. It's going to be built in Texas. So on the positive side, we have some onshoring of production into the United States. That's part of Trump's plan. On the negative side, I think the market is making too big a deal of this. I don't think it's a big deal at all for Tesla. I don't think it's a valuation driver. And in the meantime, how is Tesla, with its declining EV business, going to be able to buy anything for $16 billion? Next up, World Economic Forum has some interesting data. I always look for non-US data or broader than US data to get a more international flair. But they are, like everybody else, is predicting that the compound annual growth rate of the energy requirement for AI through 2030 is going to be 50% per annum. That's a lot. It's going to be very hard, and it's a real gating factor for the continued development of this tech. Trump is in the news. As you know, he went to Scotland and he made some deals while he was playing golf. And it looks like, even though it hasn't been formally announced, that we will have a global tariff, baseline tariff, on all of our trading partners around the world. That's a lot of countries, of 15 to 20%. Now, that is down from the threatened amount, but if 15 to 20% does become the global baseline tariff, that's going to hurt a lot of companies around the world. I don't necessarily think that is a good thing at all. So the U.S. had their own AI action plan. They announced about a week or so ago. I talked about it on the last show. No surprise that China has come up with its own AI action plan. The interesting thing here is the U.S. plan promoted by Trump is very domestic focused, whereas the Chinese plan, believe it or not, and this is a role reversal of the way the companies behaved years ago, is a international cooperation plan. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the two superpowers are going to be in a clash of the titans. Meta's AI spending, whether it's on people or technologies or companies, continues at a voracious pace. They are spending so much money. I think they were a little bit disappointed on the last rendition of their large language model, even though it's an open model. And we will hear more about that when they report over the next couple of days. But man, Zuckerberg and company cannot spend enough. So the Fed is going to meet tomorrow afternoon. Usually they come to the mic. That's Jay Powell, the chair, at about 2:15 Eastern time. I expect, nor does anybody else, any change in the benchmark interest rate. Most of us don't think we will see that, if at all, until the meeting in September. Specifically, that meeting will be on September 17. Here's a interesting tidbit. The crypto market cap is now over $4 trillion. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, it shows the advancement of these currencies. The bad thing is that might indicate a market bubble that could, as all bubbles, pop. So this is kind of interesting that in 2025, so far this year, there has been twice as much money raised by companies to buy crypto assets than there have been money raised from initial public offerings. So we have a bunch of companies that are not even tech companies, and they are leveraging their balance sheet to buy crypto. And so the driver of their business will be crypto and not what they do for a living. Very bizarre, very risky. If you own one of these companies because it manufactures washing machines and they're buying crypto, okay, you may want to keep the stock or may not, because the investment thesis has totally changed. ST Micro, which is the French-Italian semiconductor company, disastrous quarter. Disastrous. And it tells you that things continue to be bad, as I've told you before, in semiconductors for industrial applications and particularly automobiles. They, in fact, had their first quarterly loss in over a decade. I told you a little bit about Trump's American Action Plan. This actually, I think, is good, at least in the near to intermediate term, for our semiconductor companies that we really emphasize on this program, because now they can more freely export AI abroad. I was really worried, not about the tariffs at all for the likes of AMD and Nvidia, but if they couldn't ship to China, that would really ding them. And so now it looks like a headwind has become a tailwind. So that's great. T-Mobile, a company that I talk a lot about on this program, has been on my buy list in the past. Really nice quarter. Same thing with SK Hynix. SK Hynix is the South Korean memory company. Competes here in the States with Micron and also Samsung in its own country that I just mentioned. They had a high bandwidth memory chip acceleration that blew even the bulls away. And if this doesn't confirm how great it is to be in that space, I don't know what does. In the meantime, Micron's in second place, so we hold it only for that reason. And Samsung can't get its shit together, and they've been in a distant third spot. But we'll see what happens over time. But it does make me feel good about high bandwidth memory, the chips that go into AI applications. So the next is Neo Clouds. The Neo Cloud that I've been talking about for a long time is CoreWeave. CoreWeave had that merger proposed for Core Scientific. When we first started talking about this, there was about 30 to 40% ARB spread. So a lot of folks were predicting that this deal was not going to happen, as both companies said, by December 31 of this year. But now the gap is closed, chiefly because CoreWeave shares have plunged. They have absolutely plunged. Here's what I think happens. They are going to announce their results next week. They will, in my view, upside surprise on revenue, and they'll give very good guidance going forward. However, as they build out their AI infrastructure, they will not be posting profits, and they won't post profits maybe for a year or two. And so the revenue is what we need to confirm. We need to also have management confirm in their comments that over time, the heavy upfront spending will lead to some profits, because that is the core of the bear case, the short seller's case with CoreWeave, that they're spending all this money, will never get a return. The company's going to have to show them up. Honeywell had a great quarter. The stock had run too far, too fast into it, so it dropped a little bit. It might be a buying opportunity. Remember, Honeywell is going to do a General Electric move. They are going to separate into 3 publicly traded companies sometime in 2026. So I talked about Google. Their quarter was, again, nicely surprising. Particularly, I was worried about 2 things. Their Google Cloud business exceeded my view by a lot. And also, could they possibly continue double-digit revenue growth in search? Because more and more people are not searching at all. They're going to AI, Perplexity AI and some of the others, and that's how they're searching. So far, so good for Google. They haven't been hit yet. I still think it's coming. So the UK's competition gurus are back at it again, really nasty against the American Mag 7. They are now going to take it to a next legal level with both Google and Meta. Texas Instruments, shitty quarter. Again, just like ST Micro. This is a company that is industrial semiconductors, automobile semiconductors. Bad business, at least for now. SAP was a stock that I liked, the German ERP software company, but they really fumbled the ball this quarter. And so I went from buy list to hold to maybe no list for SAP. Walmart is talking about how too many of its AI agents have sprouted up across the organization. So they're going to consolidate their agents into super agents. Maybe you'll hear more about super agents from other major countries. So with that in mind, let's take a really quick look at my buy list. So here we go. I'm not going to spend any time on this. I want to get our guest out here. I guess the only things that I've changed my mind on, as I told you, Spotify, really unhappy with the quarter they announced this morning. So Spotify, which had been a Meeks buy, is now off. And then the only other thing that is new is I fancy TE Connectivity, ticker symbol TEL. Now, the stock has already run. I'm doing some more homework, so I have it in the bullpen right now. But I think before too long, this will be added to the Meeks buy list. A fresh money buy, a new pick, ticker symbol TEL. So next, I want to turn over to our guest. And our guest here is Matt Zamaglia. He is the founder, the managing partner of Quantum Coast Capital. And they are doing some very interesting things. And he knows a hell of a lot about emerging quantum companies and the technologies that they are promoting. So I'd like to bring on Matt and ask him a couple of questions after he gives us kind of an executive summary lay of the land.
Paul, thank you so much for having me here today.
Hey, Matt, how are you, brother?
Doing really great.
This is a funny story. So I told you about Matt. He's going to tell you more about his firm, but I was on CNBC, I don't know, was it 6 months ago, maybe even longer? And I was just riffing off of Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang.
I think it was around February or March, yeah.
Yeah, when he said, oh, yeah, quantum's going to be a big thing in 15 years. And Matt said, dude, you don't know what the F you're talking about. And so, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And so I listened to him. I did some research. And now Matt and I are buddies. And I am counting on him for his knowledge. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about the lay of the land. Tell us a little bit about your firm. And you also have an event coming up of which I've already bought a ticket for. So please let us know that too.
No, it's an exciting space. Quantum is one of those things that a lot of people look at as a word, and they think about it as, I don't know anything about this, or I can't know anything about this because it reminds me of, PTSD from high school or college classes where I didn't know anything about, physics. But, it's such an exciting time that we're living in right now, especially because of technology and the advances in technology. And when you think about quantum as a whole, there's a lot of different aspects to it. So there's quantum sensing, there's quantum networking, there's quantum hardware, which is something that we could probably dive into a little bit more today. And then we like to talk about the applications or the algorithms. And then there's what we always talk about is quantum inspired. So a lot of the news that we're going to start hearing in the coming years is around quantum security or post-quantum encryption. And that's a lot of the companies that we're looking at right now.
Great. Now, right now, there's probably recognized 4 pure play public companies, but maybe they're not the ones we should focus on at all. Maybe by the time they get ramped up, there's going to be a couple of private companies that might usurp them.
Look, I think as a whole, quantum is an exciting space to look at entirely, right? Like I could not say, go after one company or another. I think that supporting the ecosystem as a whole is actually really important right now. Yeah. Our firm thesis is really around the picks and shovels, around the supporting infrastructure that's needed for quantum to really advance. And also our Fund 1 is really focused on the US. So you had mentioned DeepSeek earlier in your intro as some of the AI plays that you're looking at right now. What we don't want in the US is another DeepSeek moment, but happening in quantum. So China is investing heavily in quantum. So their sort of government is proposed to have been spending around $15 billion to our $275 billion in government spending. So huge difference there. I'm optimistic on the US in the sense that we have an ecosystem built here that we could probably overperform with lower dollar figures because we are just very creative. We're very entrepreneurial. But when you start to think about the country that wins quantum wins the world. And that's a really scary sentiment there. So there was a gentleman on a panel that I was at a couple months ago, and he basically said it best. He's like, we could either invest billions in quantum today or spend trillions on defense later. So you have to really kind of start to think about that. So again, I wouldn't necessarily one specific publicly entity or private entity. I think supporting quantum as a whole monetarily and on the policy side is really important right now.
And I took a look at the largest quantum labs in the U.S. And no surprise, about 80% were college labs. Yeah. Like I think isn't even the IonQ, isn't it created by some academics
out of
from
University
the
of Maryland.
University of Maryland?
Yeah. So
can we have that edge with our educational network that the Chinese don't have?
We do. And I think that when you're looking at a lot of the quantum hardware companies, they are spinning out of the US. I mean, you mentioned Honeywell before. Quantinuum is a really great company. They're part of Honeywell's network or infrastructure as well.
And I think they're probably going to go public in the next year or so.
I couldn't speculate, but I'm sure that you're probably a little bit more educated on that than I am. But I think that when you look at quantum as a whole, it's also really important to take it out of the university infrastructure. So I've talked to a lot of universities, MIT, Harvard, Stanford, And they're all really excited for these students to go beyond the university system. And when we look at companies, IP is a really critical area. So if a university actually holds all of the IP, it might not be as good of an investment for us as if it was a student or individual that built it outside of the university system and they own all of that IP.
Yeah, because when I was doing my analysis of IonQ, I saw, they have licenses with University of Maryland and Duke, and I was wondering who controls what and how long the license has before it expires. But, we'll see what happens. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing. You mentioned briefly you have a fund at Quantum Coast Capital. I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, so our first fund is $100 million, and we're essentially in the focus of just planting money in the US. So again, pre-seed, seed, and A. That's sort of the sweet spot of the thesis for the fund. And a lot of that is really around the fact that most of these companies are still very early stage. When you look at quantum compared to AI, we actually have a huge advantage because most venture right now is focusing on the shiny object, which happens to be AI. In my opinion, it's very overpriced. There's a little bit of a bubble effect happening, whereas quantum is an area that isn't an if it's going to happen, it's a when. And we're already seeing a lot of these trends happen in the quantum space. We're already seeing, like you had mentioned, IonQ. They're already doing a lot of acquisitions because it's either for acqui-hire, because there's such a shortage of talent in the ecosystem, or candidly, they're protecting their moat, right? There are certain companies that have come out with software applications or hardware applications that really benefit their overall structure of the company.
So one of the ways that I've tried to consider it, and tell me if I'm off base, is everybody's trying to make qubits, but they make them in different ways, right? We've heard of technologies like ion trap, annealing, superconducting. Does it really matter? Or
You
all
have
these going to
topological
get to the end of the day?
spin. Yeah, look, I think that when you look at the different problems, they all can do certain things very well. So they're optimized in specific ways. Like D-Wave is a really great company at annealing, and they're very, very, very good at optimization problems, right? So you have different companies out there that are going to be successful in their own sort of vertical, if you will. They can do other things. And the other thing that I always get asked a lot is, is this going to be replacing classical computing? And the answer is no. So I'm never going to do 2 + 2 on a quantum computer. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a good application for invoking a quantum system in the mix there. But when it comes to really complex problems, or even having a little bit of AI thrown in the mix and adding a little bit of a shortcut there, you will see quantum computers in the mix and helping AI to then have classical systems be more optimized.
Now, one of the things you said just now, I'm really interested in, it's not AI necessarily or quantum. Don't we leverage quantum computing to bolster AI? Because isn't AI all about high performance computing? And we get that through, at least with some applications, from quantum.
Yeah, I look at it as sort of a cliff note or a shortcut. So if you think about classical computing and AI, they're having to solve the whole problem end to end, right? They're having to make up all of the different bits and pieces in between that it might not know about. Where quantum will get in the mix and help that classical system figure out the bits that might be missing in very short order, so that the classical system doesn't have to work as hard, essentially. So that's sort of my dumbed down version of explanation for that.
So as we move from AI to quantum, or they merge, it doesn't necessarily mean that Nvidia goes to zero.
No, I think if anything, they work together really well. And I've spoken to the folks at Nvidia, and they're closely monitoring quantum. And again, you had even mentioned, Jensen came out earlier this year, guns blazing, saying that quantum is many, many, many years away, and then had a very much of a reverse course on that statement within days, because the quantum community blew up and just said, hey, we're already here. We're already doing things. Again, not to bring up D-Wave
And
again.
then I think Nvidia hosted a conference and had some of the same quantum CEOs up on the stage.
They had essentially all of the quantum leaders up on stage. And Jensen at one point even pointed out to one of them saying, hey, you guys are probably going to replace us at some point. I don't think that statement's true either. Again, when you look at the two working together, that's really where the strength is.
So Matt, in our final moments here, for people like me and maybe others, I'm now ramped up a bit. What would you use for a source to get educated?
Look, the Quantum Insider is a really great resource. They have news every day about what's happening. I think that when you become more educated or you start to look at the policies that are happening, there's the reauthorization of the Quantum Initiative Act that's happening right now. Senator Daines is really supporting that at a high level within the U.S. These things like this need to get passed soon. And it's really critical for the US. It's really critical for our advancement in technology compared to the rest of the world. But I think that in terms of getting knowledge, Quantum Insider is a really great resource, but also we're having an event on October 8th in West Palm Beach. And this is Quantum Beach. And it's really meant for people that don't know anything about quantum, really curious, really want to learn more about what the space looks like from all of the experts in the space. So we will have some of the world's greatest people there talking at a level that's digestible and, again, demystifying what is quantum, because it's a very complex thing. I've been following the space for about 7 years now, and I've barely scratched the surface, and I'm not a physicist. So again, just kind of being knowledgeable about the space and reading up on it. The last resource that I would say is IBM has a really great book called The Quantum Decade. I always recommend this to anyone that I speak to. They just wrote it in such a really great way of being able to digest it, but also towards the end of the book, you can see practical applications. So
nice.
How can quantum impact me in various levels? So whether it's medicine or logistics or even security, all of that is listed in there.
So the Quantum Insider is a daily blog.
Yeah.
And IBM's Quantum Decade. I'm going to get that. I've already bought a ticket for your show. And because it's in West Palm Beach, do I have to wear a thong?
Optional.
So, yeah. You don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And, anybody who's following us today, if you want to meet me, I'm going to be at that thing. Me and Matt. But I'll be in the audience and he'll be up front. So I think it's a great opportunity. And Matt, you solved a couple of riddles today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And again, I think it's people like you that, really weren't knowledgeable about the space, but open to it.
Yeah.
And once you got into it a little bit more, and when we started speaking on calls, it started sort of being a little bit more digestible. It doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds.
Yeah, because it's not binary, as you said. It doesn't necessarily have to be an off-on thing. It could be a blend.
It literally is not binary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I appreciate it. I'm glad we have you as a friend here. You guys go out there, check out Matt at Quantum Coast Capital, and I will see you guys at Quantum Beach October 8th. Do I have that right?
You got it.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much. Again, Matt, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.